There's been some policies by LA. They had a moratorium on evictions. And we had tenants that took advantage of that. And it was tough telling some of like I have clients that are retired and depend upon that rental income for their retirement, being told like their kind of basically giving them the middle finger saying, I'm not paying you rent.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
It is going wonderful, man. Can't complain. If I did, I don't think anyone would listen to nor care. But yeah, business is great. I'm excited to see what 2023. It's kind of, for me, it's exciting to see what's coming down the pike. In my opinion, I know some people are a little worried, but I'm not. I'm ready to shine above all others. So, what about you, Raphael? How's it going over there?
Great attitude to have, man. So that's awesome. And then obviously we talk pretty regularly, so it's always nice to kind of get your positivity on a daily. But really, no, everything's great. Really excited about what 2023 has to hold, and really actually excited for this conversation with Brandon Carrillo. He's out of LA, if I'm not mistaken, or the LA area, I should say. I actually went to college and high school in Arizona, and I have a lot of buddies in San Diego, LA, all over the place. So I'm really excited for the discussion. So welcome, Brandon.
Oh, appreciate you guys having me on the air and appreciate the opportunity.
Oh yeah, no, and we're honored to have you. And what we typically like to do when we first get started with the interview is that we like to learn a little bit more about the person that's across the table from us. So if you don't mind kind of sharing your backstory, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's humble beginnings. I'm from North County, San Diego. Yeah, I'm like my wife and I, like between the two of us, we cover the spectrum of ethnicities. And so people always find it the tough thing growing up was, especially from a Hispanic family, is like I was always the weirdo, probably a derogatory term used, but that's what a lot of my cousins used to call me for being the white. There's three cousins that were white gingers, and the rest of our cousins were the typical Hispanics, brown skin, Hispanic features. And so, that different time, we always got teased for being, not looking the part of being Hispanic. But with that background, it helped me be strong and just forging my own way. And it's played sports, football over at Vista High, got some championships over there, and then went from there. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Had buddies that got picked up by D1 colleges, and I did not. I got offers from D3, and so I realized that I wasn't going to become a professional football player. So that was one of those trajectory things where I went to a junior college, try to find my way. And thank God for my parents. They encouraged me and thought I was going to go into government, and actually transferred to Chapman University and studied abroad at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, doing a bunch of internships in government, thinking I was going to go that route. And from my internships, I figured out that I hated government, and that was not the path for me. And fortunate for me, one of the internships I did, as I was exploring different fields, I was getting into events coordinating, which I was in a fraternity, SAE, and I was their social chair. And I was like, man, I love throwing parties, and event planning is nothing but professional parties. So I was like, this is something I could do, just drink and have fun and put together parties. And actually, that's how I met my first mentor in real estate, as he's sponsored my scholarship and brought 9/11 happened around when I was graduating. So no one was hiring. So he took me under his wing, got me into real estate, and actually got me into multifamily in Texas at that point in time. And it was great. I made a lot of mistakes, and he gave a lot of responsibility to a kid wet behind the ears. And through those relationships, I went to got picked up as a broker with Charles Dunn Company, and then the credit crisis happened, and found out how strength in numbers help, and a group of us started the Lee and Associates office in Long Beach, and have been here ever since, and made partner, and just been enjoying the ride.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and you had mentioned your Latin background. My dad's Puerto Rican, so we have a similar car. I mean, obviously, you're on the what was your heritage?
So no one believes it if
Yeah.
I tell them, but I do have a number. I'm actually a recognized Native American, and that was one of
Nice.
the reasons why Chapman got excited about me, because
Mhm.
Chapman's big on that consumer report.
Mhm.
And one of the things their recruiters talked to me was like, "Oh, like we need a Native American." She goes, "You like I remember one of their professors who knew my uncle, like my great great grandmother, Vera Carrillo, very active in the Wainano tribe. Like the professor was Apodaca, and he did like a bunch of documentaries for Chapman in Hollywood regarding Native American history for California. And when he met me, I never saw a more disappointed look than when he looked at me, because he's just like, wait a minute, you're Jim Igo's nephew. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm Brandon Carrillo, Vera's, grandson. Like we have roots with Leo Carrillo, Pancho from the Cisco Kid, like Leo Carrillo Ranch in Carlsbad. And it was one of those rough meetings, because he was excited. I heard all the excitement about meeting me, and when he saw me, just look of disappointment. Is my uncle Jim, he has that, that strong Native American look, and very active in the tribe, and my family not so much. And so it was one of those things. And then my mom, who's like fluent in Spanish, first generation American here, family is from Mexico, and just it's just that whole rags to, I wouldn't say riches, but middle America story. And
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the sad things, happening now, is people don't recognize like there's an American dream and great opportunity of freedom here. And sometimes people don't realize that. From me, nothing like traveling to recognize like we got a lot of great things here in our country, and sometimes that just gets taken for granted.
Yeah, no, most certainly. I think it's important to protect the opportunities for individuals who want to succeed. I mean, that's why people have,
Absolutely.
for history, have come to the United States, is for that opportunity to at least showcase what they can do. I mean, you're still going to have to manifest it in the marketplace, but if you're willing to put some, blood,
Yeah,
sweat, and
sweat
tears
equity
behind it,
into it.
yeah, if you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you manifest your talents in the marketplace, you should be rewarded accordingly. So,
That's the beauty of living here.
yep.
Yes. So earlier you spoke on like that you got sent to Texas, or I don't know if you got sent there or what, but you were working on multifamily. Can you like kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
go into
So
that? Great.
I remember so Maurice is his name. That was my boss and mentor. And I remember I surprised him. I told him I was running into issues trying to find a job, because no one was hiring then. And I asked him if I could take him out to lunch and just pick his brain and see if he knew anyone who had uh, needed someone to work for them. And so we had like a 2 hour lunch. He was so generous with his time, and I remember him being surprised because I paid for the lunch. He goes, "You sure?" He goes, "You're like a starving college student, and you're gonna pick up the bill." And I was like, "Well, I go, it's the credit card. So, but yeah, I go, I got this. I go, your time is worth more than my time. So I go, I appreciate just the opportunity. And he didn't forget. He called me back the next day. And he goes, hey, have you ever thought about working for me? And he goes, I have a project out in Texas. He goes, I'm not sure um, exactly what we're going to do. But are you open to like almost like a hybrid thing where I would be flown out 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and being in the property management office, and then at the same time try to figure out how to get these units filled up and then flip it and create the value. And so it was like a crash course on just figuring out a market on the spot, going. And what was funny was he had properties going from like Austin to Dallas, and like he gave me the troubled one. Like it was the stepchild of the bunch, where he's like, he goes, we can't figure out this market here in Waco. And at that time, I mean, that was like a culture shock for me. Southern California guy getting thrown into Waco. They just had the whole David Kirk. Like I was there. I thought someone was playing a joke on me, and I know I'm dating myself, but reading the newspaper, and the front page was there being a 10-year anniversary parade for David Koresh and what happened at that whole combine thing. And I just remember that in high school going, wait a minute, the FBI stormed and raided, and they're like having a parade for this guy. And then they had their first interracial high school dance. And the way they explained it was the high school chose to have separated um, dances between the races. And this was at that time their first year where everyone was in agreement about having an interracial dance. And I thought someone was playing a prank on me. And I was going, how am I going to figure this out as a Southern California guy? Where, Southern California, it's just, we're the melting pot, and just a prime example of it. And there at that time, especially in Waco, that wasn't quite the case. Like it was still, it felt like I was going back in time. It was like Back to the Future. And, but yeah, going there, I just looked at my strengths. Like, what did I have going for me that like my boss, his employees didn't have? And a lot of them were older than me. And I recognized that like I did a fraternity, the other guys didn't. And I was just fresh out of college, like just graduated. And I remember going to my boss going, hey, like I still look young. I just graduated. I have Greek relations. And one of my first ideas was to try to lease it out to the Greek organizations, because I know as when I was running our fraternity, that was the most difficult thing, was trying to find landlords that would be open to leasing out to guys in fraternities. Because I mean, we've all seen Animal House. It's one of my favorite movies. And that's the first thing that comes to mind for a property owner. And my boss is like, hey, these guys have rich parents. Like he goes, and we got insurance, so we'll go for it. And he let me run with it. And what was amazing was the sororities were more brave than the fraternities. And I remember going to the Greek council meeting and proposing my idea and the opportunity to lease up this apartment building to a Greek organization. And because it was on the wrong side of the tracks, for quote unquote, like a lot of the fraternities didn't feel comfortable, and there's like, oh, there's gang territory, and there's everything, every nightmare you can imagine that they were building up into their mind. And what was crazy for me is I've been in gang territories, and this apartment complex was to me, it looked like a nice area and everything else. And it taught me very early the mental barriers people put in their minds that are non-existent. Sure, there probably might have been a couple of one-off crimes here and there, but for me and areas, I mean, I go to Long Beach. I deal with industrial properties now, and the homelessness and some of the things I've seen throughout the years were a lot more nightmarish, realistic nightmares compared to what these college kids were putting in their mindset. And so that it didn't quite work. I didn't get the numbers I needed, but it helped become a springboard to recognize, like, to see, like, you know what, I got to make this place feel safe. And think like the gated community idea came to mind with what we did in California, some of our California properties.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it goes to show. I mean, obviously, different people in different areas, they have different stigmas of certain things. I know when I moved here to Louisville, there's certain stigmas that are present just because people have been here for a long period of time, and there's certain ideas of how things are, even though they may not be that way anymore. But it's just maybe if you've lived in a place for a long period of time, you just have these ideas that permeate in your mind. And obviously, you thinking outside the box as an outsider. And that's why I think it's so important to travel, like you had mentioned, because it gives you those new perspective and say, oh, well, actually, it's maybe not this bad. And maybe there's a different way we can approach it because of my life experiences. I can draw on that and say, well, I was in Greek life. Let's see if we can maybe get, some fraternity members or sorority members to fill in. And I'm sure, not having been in a fraternity or sorority, the people that you were affiliated with at the time obviously didn't have that perspective as well. So I think it just goes to show that, applying your life experiences and diversifying your life experiences is only going to benefit you long-term in whatever profession you pursue. So
absolutely.
That's awesome. So one thing I'm curious about is, obviously, you started off in the property management space. You had mentioned that, you got that opportunity through just taking a gentleman out to lunch, and they took a chance on you. And then on the second go, as well, mainly related to the brokerage side, you jumped into the brokerage space. What made you decide to pursue industrial, and then maybe talk about a little bit of the struggles early on you faced in the process?
Yeah, no, it was by chance. So one of the things I started recognizing with multifamily, because I had a hybrid type position where I got a salary and I got bonused in regards to the value I added onto projects and us flipping, and I recognized earlier on, like, hey, this company invested in me, and I started seeing the add-on value I was applying, and I saw the return I was getting. I was like, wow, this is a fraction of what I should be getting. I started seeing the value I created, but also too, I had to take into account, and I think what's tough for people in today's generation is to recognize what opportunities the cost of investments, of someone purchasing something and the carry cost involved, and then at the same time bringing, just because you got brought in and added on to that value and able to create that value. I think one of the things in our industry at times people forget, like, you got to take care of people. And for me, early on, I recognized, like, bringing up to my boss, like, hey, I saw I brought this value. You guys were able to bring this. I know I got this. This is a part of my compensation plan. But going forward, I try to have just rational conversations about compensation. And what happened was, eventually, like, they started throwing on more responsibilities to me, and I was talking to other people in other industries, and part of that led to what Charles Dunn was. One of the head people there is just like, you're doing this hybrid, but you're more of a broker. Like, it's like you got this was it protective, this blanket, security blanket in regards to like your salary. But in order to justify bringing in the compensation you would like, you got to go into brokerage, and it's 100% commission. It's kill what you eat. And do you feel confident enough in your skill set and ability to do that? And that was a tough conversation, because at that time, the 3 weeks on, 1 week off was killing me. It was ruining a lot of my relationships. And at that time, I finally met someone that I got engaged with, and she believed in me to make this launch pad. And I started making the transition out of multifamily, because one of the things I didn't like dealing with, and it was more personal. It was more of a personal preference. I didn't like the conversations I was having in regards to, people. They're seeing people put like their families in some of these units that were meant for like singles, maybe a couple, but putting families in there, and seeing them get evicted, and being that crux of pushing values, all about pushing values up and rents up. And I just didn't feel, I started getting very more and more uncomfortable with it. And what started inspiring me was going into a different industry. That's where industrial office started to draw me in, because having conversations with companies, and what was nice is having conversations with company that was more in line with, here's the facts, here's the reality, and being able to have frank conversations with companies where if their business was going the wrong direction, being able to help their company save jobs, to either downsize them and help them reposition to be able to weather the storm. And then as they grow, help them with their dream, and hopefully help them get to that dream of owning real estate and have an exit strategy out if they were planning on selling. And so that's where I started feeling that draw towards that industry. Hopefully that answers that question.
Sure. No, for sure. No, I appreciate the feedback, because it's always nice to hear, people's incentive or reason for going into something. For me, I didn't know anything about commercial before I got into it. And when I got into it, I started doing transactions and realized that retail is something I really enjoy. So I feel like it's something that you just kind of learn as you go. And once
Right.
you kind of find where your niche is, and you just kind of run with it. So
I'm kind of curious of particularly the LA market and the evolution of the industrial market out there, since like you started in that, like how it's actually evolved. Can you kind of let us know?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. Of when I first started making the transition and learning everything, we had more manufacturing, and what people tend to forget, and what's always tough, is from like markets that have been growing in other spots where they're getting new product. Like what's always tough is people from the Midwest. It's just, you don't have the bureaucratic mess as much. Like that was always like, I'd done storage shed deals when I was in Texas. Like we diversify. We just not only did multifamily, but we also did storage units, and how easy it was to put up a building. And that was always a tough transition, was when I did decide to focus on an area of like Charles Dunn was all about area of responsibility. Here's the area that we want you to focus and know everything inside out that's happening here. What deals get done, and leases, sales, et cetera, et cetera. And what was interesting for making that transition out of multi and into here was learning everything and knowing everything going on in Long Beach and LA Basin, and the huge aerospace industry that we had here. And not only that, but also how the movie industry plays into it. And during the credit crisis, we saw a major shift. And with a lot of the older product, especially by the ports, you got a lot of second, third generation buildings that were built in the 40s when World War II was going on, and we were manufacturing stuff. You had Boeing with its huge presence, and Rubbercraft Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and we saw this exodus. And part of it was the policy, the changing of policy in California, and the world was changing. And you saw this exodus out of California to be closer to Washington, D.C. and contracts. And we saw globalization more taking place, and now doing things cheaper and things going outside. And for a lot of our smaller machinists and everything else, it hurt a lot of those guys. But what's amazing for a lot of these businesses is you started seeing other industries backfill. And what's always amazing, and what I tell a lot of my clients is like, this is one of the best real estate markets in the world, and especially here to own something in LA, because we have so many feeders. There's so many different industries. When I was out in Texas, one of the property owners we worked with leased out to Coca-Cola, and they had this large, it was probably like a 75,000 square foot industrial building. And Coca-Cola would only do 1-year leases, and that was to have leverage over landlords. And I remember like this was this guy's retirement, and Coca-Cola, and what's weird is Coca-Cola was telling him, this is what you're going to lease us the building for. This is what we're going to pay. If not, there's so much land out here, we'll go to another landlord who's willing to build us a building and give us our rate. And, they do the cap rate, and there's like, we're sure they'll be happy with this. And what's nice about being here in LA is it's like, and it works opposite. The landlords really drive the deals, because there's like, what, vacancy rate is around 1%, and there's not a lot of supply, and there's tons of demand, and it's just not e-commerce. But we have satellite, like we have like almost a renaissance, especially in Long Beach and Douglas Park, with Virgin Orbit, Spin Launch, SpaceX over in Hawthorne, like these satellite companies that are re-energizing aerospace. And over a decade ago, we didn't see that coming. We just saw the seeds of it being planted, and now it's just taking off. And Elon Musk, with his success with the rockets, and Virgin had their little debacle in London, but it's just been, and we don't even have those industries feeding in. We have Oxy, the oil industry. People don't realize, like with all the press out in the nation in regards to California, people forget we have a big oil industry here in LA, and now they're trying to get rid of it. There's policy, and that's a whole other thing that's been happening. But we have that. We have contractors, developers, crane guys, bus companies. It list goes on, and they backfill a lot of our inventory, and that's why our lease rates and sales rates are as crazy as they are.
Well, and the fact that if correct me if I'm wrong, it's either the largest or second largest port in the entire country. I mean, you
between LA
exactly, and the amount of product that comes through the country from that region of the world. I mean, there's so many. I mean, it's where the commerce is coming from. It comes from that location and disperses throughout the rest of the country. And so you want to be as close as possible to, that product.
Absolutely. And what a lot of people tend to forget is the consumption power just here in Southern California alone. And like 40% of those goods that come in from China, Vietnam, you name it, stay usually here because of our purchasing power here. And then stuff that doesn't gets thrown up on the rail. And the thing is that the missteps by the ports and local government is we've had some shutdowns at the ports that have caused some issues, and companies now are more aware of it. And that's why New York and New Jersey's container volume shot up the way it did, because everyone, since COVID, we've broken our infrastructure, I think across the board, not only on the supply chain, but government just trying. I mean, there's been some policies by LA. They had a moratorium on evictions, and we had tenants that took advantage of that. And it was tough telling some of our like I have clients that are retired and depend upon that rental income for their retirement, being told like their tenant kind of basically giving them the middle finger, saying, I'm not paying you rent. And then the moratorium lasts for a year and they didn't collect rent. But what was amazing was the county assessors, like I own real estate, and I remember going, okay, I had a couple of tenants ask me, hey, can I get a break on rent for 3 months? And we worked out a deal just to get me through this shutdown. And I remember going to the county assessor on one of my properties, and I go, hey, since you're giving breaks to tenants, as a landlord, can I pay you guys later? And they're like, oh no, you pay late, you pay the late fee, and that's due. And if you don't pay it, well, it's okay, but we're going to start assessing the fees and then put you on notice on your title and try to take your property away. And it's just like, wait a minute, bit of hypocrisy there, but
yeah, I see it. I saw Twitter, obviously very active in commercial real estate. There's a very active Twitter ecosystem, and I remember this gentleman out of LA, I believe, he owns some multifamily product there, and he was recanting this story about a tenant of theirs that just stopped paying rent. And then after like 6 months, they approached him and said, okay, that's fine. I'll move out, but you need to pay me. And they just dictated the terms that they were essentially going to move out with. And the guys are like, well, I got to do it because otherwise, like, you're going to tie up this property for another 6 months to a year, which is really unfortunate. And I'm sure most people, I would hope that most people don't take advantage of it, but there are definitely those instances where it's just going to happen. And unfortunately, it seemed like that was what was being, allowed. So.
Oh, they extended it again. So for commercial properties, the moratorium evictions have expired. So a lot of our troubled tenants, we have been able to evict. And what's frustrating now is like we're dealing with tenants that are like, wow, this whole application process, all these questions from landlords is really tedious. And the reason why is they're now being super careful on who they lease to, because now the government has set a precedent for like, okay, if we go through like another COVID situation, we're going to step in and these are the type of policies we're going to push. And because the residential one's still in effect, they just extended it, which is absolutely frustrating. And you add on the mansion tax, which was another one that just fooled voters. Like, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that thought by voting for the mansion tax, they thought they were taking it to the 1%ers that live in Beverly Hills and didn't even realize or have a concept that it really affects commercial properties. Most of your properties selling above 10 million is actually your commercial properties. And once again, it's just, that whole advertising and play on words done by politicians to pass things because of their frustrations with the state of California having Proposition 13. That was the thing in Texas. Like that was one of my big mess ups in Texas, is that they don't have Prop 13 protection. So there's supplemental taxes. So if a deal gets done, and I haven't done Texas real estate in decades, but at the time, like, we got supplemental taxes of them adjusting our property taxes for sales done in the area. And that's, talk about throwing off your investment chart.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, no, and obviously, that can be very frustrating, and I'm sure that's one of the, that's part of the headlines that people see. But I think they also, like you had said, forget that California is the largest economic driver in the country. I mean, it's the biggest. If it were its own separate country, I remember reading about it, but it was like it's like the fifth, right, in the world. Yep. Which is crazy. I mean, you think about the state of California operating at that level, is just, it's amazing. So, but anyways, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, but I'm glad that we were able to at least have a conversation about the the industrial market in LA, because like you said, it's probably extremely robust and you've been operating in the space for many years. So we're glad to
Yeah,
hear those
I'm
insights.
impartial to it.
Yeah, I'm impartial, right? Yeah. So one thing I'm curious about is, obviously our audience ranges in different age groups and individuals, but I'd say a good swath of our populace is relatively early in their career. Between 25 and 34 is kind of what the podcast
Oh, if
statistics
we could
say,
go
right?
back.
Yeah, if we could go back, right? No, and that's what I'm curious about right now is that, for those individuals, that target audience, what piece of advice would you be willing to share that, you wish you would have received when you got started and maybe, could have helped you immensely as you traversed, the first few years of your career?
I'll go with like what I've always told our internship or our interns at our office. Like our office policy is to pay our interns, which a lot, and the president of our office, Greg Gill, like it's one of his big things is like paying for people's labor and the work they put in to help us. And I'm a big supporter of that. Is you do as many internships as possible in anything that you're curious in, because I think it's so easy to be. I believe anyone can be successful in anything. I've come across clients, and I'm sure you have too, where they're doing something simple and people talk down about it, and or it's like, oh, you sell what was it, pencils or pens, and I believe like there's some great movies like of like one of our favorite questions for interns is sell me this pen.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe if you're passionate about anything, you could be successful in it. Whatever you could put your mind to, you can achieve it. And I think what's unfortunate is our society has, and you add in TikTok and all the other stuff in regards to like $1 million listing, I think does the biggest disservice to our industry as possible. Because I think a lot of people don't understand that it's entertainment and there's nothing wrong with entertainment. Like they need eyeballs, they need advertisers, people need to support a living. But I think it gives a misconception of our industry and the amount of work and knowledge that goes into our industry. And one of the things, like I'm sure you guys know, like when we go into a listing presentation to rep a landlord, the number one question is our commission and to justify our commission. And I have no problem with that question. It's always okay, this is, you see this lump number, but I don't get that one lump number. This is how it gets broken down. You got the house, we got E&O insurance. You go through like the cost of doing business, and especially in California, it's just going up like everything else. And for people, guys that are looking to get, like at one point, I remember being in college, like my fraternity brothers and I were talking about buying a bar and creating like our own place. And I think we didn't have a bad idea. It's just, it was something we were passionate about. And I think whatever anyone's passionate about, any industry, try it out and see if it's something that works. Because I got relationships with business partners where they, like their family business was successful in like seafood. But they remember growing up, waking up 3 a.m, checking out because they had high quality, seafood. And that was the thing, especially being by the port, San Pedro and all that. And he's like, grew up in that life. And he's like, I can't see myself doing that. He goes, I go, but your parents make so much money doing this industry, like this business. They've already done the hard work, establishing the context, the business, and all you have to do is just continue what they've done. Like the hard part's been done. The only thing that you could do is mess it up. Like they already set the template for you. But he's successful as a banker, and it resonated with me because he was passionate about that, and that's what drove him. And so I think that's the big thing for anyone is just like, if you're passionate, I've met people that have taken things that other people look down and become very wealthy. So hopefully people just don't look at our industry as, oh, this is the only way to be successful, because it isn't, because we're the guys working for them. And we deal with a lot of big egos in our industry, and they forget that to humble themselves and realize like, hey, we're these guys with these ideas and these visions were able to create a successful business that they were able to sell and buy real estate with, and have something for their future generations. And us in our industry, hopefully don't look down on it, but look up to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you alluded to passion. And I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle. Obviously there's certain people who have passions from a very early age, and some discover them over time. And sometimes what happens when you first get started in the business is you may not even be quote unquote passionate for it. Like, it's not going to be like you're getting up in the morning to want to go do it. But I feel like also becoming excellent at something, you do become passionate. So the idea that, everyone has like a one thing that they are destined to do. I don't know if I'm of that mindset, but I do think that, anytime you pursue something with grit and determination and you become excellent at it and you're able to service, people in a meaningful way. I mean, that in my opinion is how you find passion. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I'm fortunate. I mean, not everyone has parents that, that come from different like generations and stuff like that. I was fortunate where my dad had a dream, and he was at UCLA working on becoming a lawyer, because he went to military school, and his came from a broken home, but he had his grandparents driving him like, hey, go, this is what you do, go become a lawyer, go get after it. But it goes back to what you're saying, Raphael, in regards to passion, because he took a roll of the dice. He was actually a great singer, great musician, and got picked up by a record company because he was up in UCLA, whole media capital of the world, and got signed on by Warner Brothers. But he also learned a tough lesson. Like, they told him he had to drop everything, and he went. He did it and pursued his dream. Produced a record with them, and then unfortunately it just didn't take off. And he was a folk style singer. And at that point in time, like Gordon Lightfoot, Cat Stevens was on its way downwards. And that was the style of genre he played to. And Van Halen and those rock bands, were taken off. And that was not his style. And he got dropped by the record label. So he also taught me always have a backup plan.
That's awesome.
So one of the questions that we ask a lot of our guests is, what is one of the most impactful books that you've ever read? And it doesn't have to pertain to actual commercial real estate or even business. It could just be anything that's personal, or it could be a podcast as well. I mean, I don't know if you listen to those. So.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if you guys seen my like Twitter feed or anything like that, but I know some people get turned off by it, but being a brain tumor survivor, the book I've held on to dearly in my life is the Holy Bible. I feel like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of lessons there that carried me through that journey. And especially, being so, I was a believer before, but before my brain tumor situation. And but I think that's the most impactful thing in my life. And I know that might turn some people off, and especially in the day and age we live in. And I know I've been told to ratchet it down at times, but I'm one of those people. I'm firm on my beliefs and my convictions, and that would be my book.
I think we're in a time now that's going to be, I know some people turning away, but I think people need to become closer to that book. So, at least I know I am. That's my direction, is getting even closer to what I already did know, but going back to it. So,
well, and being an atheist, I was an atheist growing up. So, like, if I throw people in for even a greater loop, like, I was an atheist. I used to be one who did, used to drive a lot of people crazy because I had so many questions, and at that point in time, no one could answer them. And I finally met someone who just said, "Hey, have you read the Bible from cover to cover?" And just challenged me. He's like, "Hey, you've read a lot of books," and that was my thing. I read a lot of books, and going back to rec, some advice for the younger generation: don't stop reading, and if you do have whatever belief you have, great, but read that book cover to cover. At least you could say you did it, because I believe, and that's what changed my heart. Like, someone just said, "You know what? You're a smart guy. Read it cover to cover, and then talk to me." And I wasn't the same ever again. I did what he said.
It's amazing. Yeah, and it is a foundation of a lot of, our Western society. The information that's drawn by it, and obviously the belief of what it is, and obviously we're thankful for you sharing that insight with the group. So one thing I'm kind of curious about is, at the end of our podcast, we usually like to ask our guests to contribute to something that we call the commercial real estate treasure chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience, and usually our guests either contribute something like a PDF or Excel sheet or something really that they think would be of value to the audience. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to share what you're willing to contribute today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We just wrapped up our fourth quarter market report. It's based around industrial real estate for the LA Basin, and what it covers is it's a general snapshot. And so for a lot of companies, it's really helpful for a lot of our clients, especially in the Midwest, East Coast, that are just thinking about expanding out here. And so it's like, okay, if I'm looking at space, industrial warehouse, and if I want to lease it, what am I looking at? Just a general ballpark number. And if I want to buy something, what's a general ballpark number? And then at the same time, like, what's the supply and how much vacancy? How much is under construction? How much is going to be coming online? And our market report covers all that info. It gives if anything, a snapshot of what we do. If anything, helps others in regards to better understanding what our business is about and how we help clients.
We appreciate that. I think it's going to be a great resource for people who are interested in understanding more about the market that you're operating in. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Brandon, again, I want to say as well, I know Raphael can back me up on this. We appreciate your time. It's been an honor to have you on the podcast. I know people are going to want to try to contact you, and maybe if they're coming out there to the West Coast and LA area, they might need a contact out there. What is one way they could get in contact with you to maybe do a deal or just to speak with you?
Absolutely. No, I'm an open book. So my direct line is 562-354-2510. And like, my biggest goal is to make someone else an expert and get them as much information as possible. I think too many in our industry shy away from it. It is like a part of our business is giving free information. And as costs go up, things go up, it's tougher and tougher to do. But that's my passion, and that's what I enjoy. And especially for I've passed on the same generosity that my first mentor gave to me. I've taken young guys out to lunch and let them pick my brain, and I'm open and willing for any of those encounters in regards to just business is not my only thing, but also giving back to this amazing industry that we're in. And if there's any way I can help share that knowledge or help someone, I'm here.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for being willing to be there for people. I'm sure there's going to be people that reach out and take advantage of the fact that you're willing to do that. And obviously, I think in general, paying it forward is a good motto to have in life. And, obviously you have that motto, so we do appreciate that so much. So, Brandon, thanks again so much for your time. We really greatly appreciate it. If you guys, those of you guys who are listening, if you guys are listening to this in a podcast format, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review. It makes a huge impact in our ability to reach a broader audience. Along with that, if you guys are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. it really does make an impact. And obviously with the YouTube algorithm as well, so we reach a broader and broader audience, and we can spread the message of the different facets of commercial real estate. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.